I don't think this is a redemption interview for Bruno Fernandes. I think it's something more awkward than that. It's a very polished attempt to turn Bruno into the moral center of Manchester United, the loyal captain, the misunderstood leader, the player who turned down absurd money because the badge still means something. And the reason the interview works at all is not because it proves that story. It's because Bruno occasionally slips past it and gives you something better. A portrait of a footballer whose entire identity is built on compulsion, responsibility, and a slightly exhausting need to justify every decision he makes. The video's thesis is simple enough. Bruno stayed, Bruno leads, Bruno suffers. Therefore, Bruno is the right kind of Manchester United captain. But the interview keeps smuggling in a stronger claim than it can actually prove. It wants loyalty to function as evidence of character. The £200 million headline, the Roy Keane section, the voicemails from teammates, the family material near the end, they all push toward the same conclusion. Not just that Bruno made difficult choices, but that those choices reveal a kind of moral seriousness. That's where I start pushing back, because staying at a giant club isn't a moral argument on its own. It's a career choice, a power choice, a self-image choice, and sometimes a very flattering story you get to tell yourself afterwards. Where the episode becomes much more convincing is at the beginning, when it stops selling Bruno the captain and starts showing Bruno the product of a household. The material about his father's parenting style and playing against older boys isn't just motivational wallpaper. It actually explains his football in a way the later captaincy rhetoric doesn't. You can hear the origin of the compulsive risk-taker there. Approval is conditional, standards are high, and fear gets trained out of you early because the alternative is irrelevance. That's useful. It gives you a mechanism. Bruno's appetite for low-percentage passes, constant involvement, and emotional intensity suddenly feels less like a personality quirk and more like a survival language he never stopped speaking. Then the Manchester United phone call arrives, and you can watch the interview pivot from psychology into mythology. The story of hearing United wanted him is effective because it captures scale, the gravitational pull of the club, the emotional charge of the move, the sense that this was destiny finally ringing his phone. But notice what happens rhetorically. United becomes less an employer than a final exam. Joining the club isn't framed as an opportunity or a contract. It's framed as a calling. That matters because once the club is treated like destiny, every later decision, staying through chaos, defending managers, enduring criticism, can be folded into a narrative of devotion rather than judged as a tactical career calculation. The first place the argument really softens under pressure is Bruno's instinct to back every manager. On paper it sounds admirable: stability, respect, collective responsibility, no public betrayal. In practice, it's one of the safest ideas in the whole interview because it asks nothing difficult of power. Saying every manager deserves backing is emotionally tidy and institutionally convenient, especially at a club that has burned through managers while avoiding harder conversations about recruitment, structure, and ownership culture. Bruno speaks like a captain here, but not necessarily like an analyst of why United keeps failing. The video lets that slide. It treats loyalty to managers as wisdom when it might also be a refusal to distinguish between solidarity and honest diagnosis. The best section of the entire interview is the one about risk. Not because it's romantic, but because it's specific. Bruno's defense of giving the ball away is one of the few moments where he offers an actual football argument instead of a character argument. Creative players lose possession because creation is probabilistic. If you want the final pass, the disguised pass, the unflattering pass that breaks a line, you also have to tolerate the turnover that makes pundits groan. That's the strongest piece of reasoning in the episode because it names a trade-off instead of pretending excellence is clean. It also quietly explains why Bruno divides people. He doesn't just accept chaos. He thinks controlled waste is part of his job description. And this is where the interview earns some of its sentimentality. When Bruno talks about the dressing room during bad runs, and later about the voicemails from teammates, the performance of leadership suddenly looks less heroic and more draining. Not noble in the abstract, administratively, emotionally, physically draining. He describes captaincy as constant emotional traffic control, standards, reassurance, confrontation, repetition. That's valuable because it strips away the fantasy that leadership is just big speeches and armband iconography. The episode's most mature insight is that being captain at a club in decline means absorbing everybody else's panic without being allowed much of your own. Now, the Roy Keane segment is the part people will clip, and I think the video knows that. Bruno's basic complaint, that his words were twisted, or at least flattened into a caricature, is plausible. Football punditry often reduces players to symbols and then argues with the symbol. But the interview also benefits from that conflict. Keane gives Bruno a villain, or at least a foil, and once that foil exists, the conversation can stage Bruno as the misunderstood grown-up. My problem isn't Bruno defending himself. It's that the exchange never really tests the substance of Keane's criticism, not whether Bruno cares, but whether his style of visible frustration can sometimes destabilize the team he's trying to lead. That's the hard question. The interview prefers the easier one. Was he quoted fairly? And then we hit the headline, the huge offer he turned down. This is where the evidence does less work than the interview wants it to. Bruno presents the decision as a straightforward hierarchy of values: family, unfinished business, belief in the project, love for the club. I don't think he's inventing that. I do think the video quietly asks you to ignore every complicating factor that would make the story less saintly. His status at United, the power of being captain rather than just another well-paid star elsewhere, the risk of leaving Europe's central football conversation, the possibility that legacy matters more than raw money once you're already rich beyond reason. Refusing an enormous offer can be admirable. It can also be self-interested in a way that still feels emotionally sincere. The interview has no appetite for that ambiguity. What the family section does, structurally, is fascinating. It arrives after the Keane dispute and the Saudi money question, almost like a final witness for the defense. Here is Bruno the husband, the father, the son, therefore read the footballer more generously. And to be fair, it works on a human level. It softens the interview, and some of Bruno's most believable warmth is here. But it also reveals the show's preferred method. When a football argument gets messy, move one layer deeper into biography until criticism feels almost indecent. That's not manipulation exactly. It's emotional leverage. The audience is being asked to infer steadiness on the pitch from tenderness off it, and those are related truths at best, not the same truth. Still, I don't want to flatten this into a cynical dismissal, because the interview gets one big thing right about Manchester United. It understands that the club's crisis is not just tactical, it's cultural and psychological. Bruno keeps returning to standards, daily habits, accountability, what gets tolerated in bad periods, what a manager changes in the atmosphere before he changes the shape on a tactics board. That can sound vague, but at a broken club, it isn't vague at all. It's the infrastructure of seriousness. The episode is at its smartest when it treats elite performance as a culture problem before it treats it as a highlights problem. So my verdict is awkwardly split. As an argument that Bruno Fernandes is a serious leader with a coherent philosophy of risk, duty, and standards, the interview is persuasive. As an argument that his biggest choices, staying at United, backing every manager, surviving criticism, should be read as proof of moral clarity, it's much shakier. The strongest part of the video is Bruno explaining football. The weakest part is Bruno, and the show around him, explaining Bruno. One gives you trade-offs, mechanisms, and actual insight. The other gives you a polished self-portrait with the roughest edges carefully buffered by family, destiny, and just enough pain to make the myth feel earned. If you want more reviews like this, not of whether a football interview was good, but of what it quietly asks you to believe about power, loyalty, and image, stick around. The next one might look inspirational on the surface too. That's usually when it gets interesting.